Yesterday, Wim Hof responded to the allegations of abuse that appeared in De Volkskrant, which is a Dutch newspaper, and said that he is filing a legal case for defamation and slander against De Volkskrant. And I wanted to go over that and just so much crazy stuff that's going on in the Wim Hof world. And I've moved this whole discussion over to my back channel because honestly, I just don't feel like just dumping this on everyone who is in my main channel, who maybe doesn't care about the stuff with Wim Hof, which honestly I agree with. I'm sort of done with Wim Hof, but he just won't let me go. So I can't let him go. That sounds like dramatic. There should be like a song with that. Anyway, let me go into the press release that Wim Hof released yesterday. And I post this, it's on my main channel in my community section. I sort of put updates as they go. And I just try to be reasonably neutral in those things, just posting their words so you can see what they're saying. So you understand why, what I'm saying, what the context for all of it. So you can make up your own mind. Okay, so the press release, which was titled Wim Hof Files Charges for Defamation and Slander, they talk about how they didn't like De Volkskrant's piece, with Wim saying specifically, Wim does not recognize himself in these allegations. To quote another section, Wim Hof thoroughly responded to all 40 questions that De Volkskrant sent him, posed by the newspaper. In his responses, Wim Hof and others repeatedly indicated that at least one of De Volkskrant's sources was unreliable and had previously spread false information about him. Through his lawyer, Wim warned De Volkskrant in advance that the newspaper should not publish any accusations without conducting its own thorough investigation. Which, of course, if you've read the piece, it actually is a pretty thorough investigation with court records and multiple sources coming from many different places. And also, like there was a Dutch news segment, which was all in Dutch, so I had to read it through the closed captions. But
zijn mij 40 vragen gestuurd. Die heb ik goed beantwoord.
And Wim was saying in that he was only given 1 week to respond to all 44 questions, which means he had to do 7 questions a day to be able to respond to the allegations. Wim is sort of further saying basically that he wasn't given enough space to talk about those issues that were raised. So my suggestion is that Wim, since you have such a giant platform, why don't you just post the answers to those 44 questions in your blog, just online, and so you can give the full accounting that you want to in the public. And if they're false allegations, you can substantiate what the truth is. Instead, he's opted to file a case in court. And he says that the legal action against De Volkskrant holds the newspaper accountable for providing a platform for false accusations without conducting its own investigation. In a civil lawsuit, he plans to present the publication to the court. Well, it was a thorough investigation. So unless the laws in Holland are radically different from the laws in America, and I do believe they're actually a little bit more, less protective than what we have in America. But in general, like a journalist can present facts and put them out into the world and couch those facts, tell you what the limitations are and what the way they make their argument. And I read their article, and I think they did a pretty good job overall. And I don't really see what their case is going to be. In the United States, this would look like a slap suit. It looks like Wim is just trying to threaten news sources from not reporting the truth, And when they say that, you can't report false things in the paper, well, what about all the false things that Wim always claims? Like all the records that he supposedly has, all of his health claims, all of his allegations that like Fauci is ruining the medical system, or that big pharma's out to get him. What about those accusations, or the accusations against me, saying that I'm a terrible journalist who's in it for the money and playing both sides, and all of those things, that have been said? How are those not slander? My feeling is that we are in the public sphere, and it is a realm of ideas. And if you've got some facts to share them. Okay. Incidentally, Laura Hoff also posted this really quite fascinating Instagram story, which says, "What do you do with journalists not stopping?" And it was a poll. You should ignore them or stop it once and for all, which sort of seems to me like she really wants to get into some litigation. Everyone has a right to sue. Anyone can sue. I can sue. You can sue. She can sue. Anyone can sue. The question is, are you in the right when you sue? Anyway, to just go a little bit more into like another press release they put out, Wim's oldest son, Wim Hof, said in a statement to The Guardian that his father did not recognize many of the accusations made in the article. The allegations that his father had abused his ex-wife were, quote, entirely false. He said the allegations of domestic violence, as portrayed, are not only grossly exaggerated, but also deeply hurtful. Okay, so when you're saying something is entirely false, how do you are you just saying that Carolyn is lying and that Noah is lying, his Ainam's brother are lying? Or do you have anything to back that up? Were you a witness to any of these events, or were the only witnesses Wim, Noah, and Carolyn? What about those court records? Were those entirely made up? When you say that there was the abuse is entirely false in one statement, and the next statement you say the allegations of domestic violence are only grossly exaggerated but deeply hurtful, then I guess you're sort of admitting that there was domestic violence there. Hurtful, I get. No one wants this story to come out, right? No one wanted Wim to be an abuser. But if there's evidence of that, if that evidence is corroborated from multiple directions, well, you have to deal with those facts. You can't just take the facts that you like about something. You have to take the whole truth and try to understand some nuance. However, I do want to make a point about the questions of the unreliable source in the piece, because this is actually, they have a point. And repeatedly they've said that there's someone who has allegations of who has committed fraud in the past, who is one of the main sources. And I'm talking about Robert Hoff, who is a documentary filmmaker. He's Wim Hof's older brother. Now, in 2015, Rob Hoff was convicted of fraud and sentenced to a fine of 150,000 euros. The company additionally had to pay another 50,000 euros for frauds where he applied for European film subsidies to get some films off the ground. And then I guess he just didn't produce the films, and he was in cahoots, maybe in cahoots, with a guy named Frank William, who was the director of something called the NMO, who was also sentenced to a bunch of community service hours. And this fraud occurred in 2004 to 2008. Now, the reason why this is important is because Rob also is saying that he saw abuse against Olaya by Wim, and he is what they are relying on. So the question is Rob an unreliable person? Can you never trust anything he says? Now, I've spoken to Rob on multiple occasions. I even put a clip of Rob talking about the abuse that he witnessed with Olaya previously in the last video that I put out.
Then we found Olaya at the home crying, and she was in Holland, not speaking the language, and left alone with the children. Wim was outside, didn't leave any money. When he came back, he treated her very badly. My former girlfriend was a psychologist and saw everything. He beat us. He beat her, and when she cried, he locked her up in the wardrobe.
I think it's a good point that someone with a fraudulent history needs to be taken with sort of a grain of salt. And yet Wim is also saying that even though he has a domestic abuse charge, that he's no longer abuser. So he's saying that just because Rob had a fraud charge, that he is still a fraudster, even though they both did, I guess, community service and some fines. So that now they should be cleared and not the same people. So Wim's sort of playing both sides of this. However, I've spoken to Rob, and Wim has alleged that he has tried to extort Wim on multiple occasions, and maybe there's something to that. I can't really weigh in on what that extortion actually looks like, but I will say this in regards to what he said about Olaya. The Volkskrant article noted that it wasn't just Rob saying that; it was also his ex-wife who he was with. So at the point in 2010, Rob was with his ex-wife. I think now lives in like Croatia or Czech Republic, something like that, and they were together. And Rob reported to his ex-wife, or maybe his ex-wife heard it directly from Wim. It's actually not clear from the piece, but the information was relayed in 2010. If Rob is trying to extort Wim Hof, was he playing the long game? Was he planting this information all the way back in 2010? So 15 years later, he could use this information to extort Wim? That seems a little bit far-fetched. And because we have two sources from that time acknowledging that this information was relayed, I think that's worth mentioning. Like, it's worth putting it out there. So while I agree that Rob might be a problematic source, has been convicted of fraud, it doesn't mean that everything he says is inaccurate. You can make your own decision on that. You now have the information to decide for yourself if a fraud conviction is indeed a reason to never trust anything someone says in the future. And if you take that statement, take that position, then you also need to say that if Wim was an abuser and paid for his crime with his community service and is fine, well, has he changed? Consistency is important here. My feeling is that we have to look at all the evidence that's out there, state it, and you can make up your own mind as to what happens. Now, another thing that has occurred among Wim Hof, because there's just so much that's blowing up right now, is a guy named Dominic Stulens, who is a noted critic of mine, who does not like me at all. He thinks that everything I have ever done is terrible, and that I'm a liar, and I'm in it for the money, and I'm playing both sides, and I'm doing everything I have ever done is wrong. And he's done extensive videos about that, which I haven't watched in their entirety because they're really long. But, I have had many email exchanges with this man. Anyway, so he has posted in the Wim Hof instructor forums, and I'm just going to show you this. We'll just put it on the screen. I'm just going to read it to you. Here's a fair question. I believe that many of us would like to know, and again, this is to all of the instructors in their sort of private chats. Can the so-called Wim Hof method instructor that passes on the private Wim Hof method instructor mails to Scott Carney within 30 minutes of receiving them show himself or herself? Please like this post with an angry face. There are obviously some clear suspects here. Maybe you'll pass on a screenshot of this message too. They did. Leaking our private emails to someone that clearly lies so much, to someone who is so vindictive, hateful, and condescending towards Wim, to the whole Wim Hof Method instructor community, is not the goal of your Wim Hof Method certification. It's a vicious act of deceit. It's venomous, two-faced, and very disingenuous, just like Scott Carney's behavior. I believe you deep down understand why. No! Exclamation point, high five. Emojis. If you really love and support Scott, spelled wrong, so much, you're not in the right place here anymore. Let's agree on that. So please have some honor, or at least some guts, and just leave us in the give up your certification. You probably don't use it anyway. This behavior is not part of the values of the community we're trying to build here on behalf of many Wim Hof method instructors. Well, Dominic, I got to tell you something. One, I get your emails a lot quicker than 30 minutes. They come to me within 5 minutes, usually, of them posting. Second, it's not just one Wim Hof Method instructor who's sending me this information. I've been reporting on the Wim Hof Method for 10 years, and I know everyone. I mean, not everyone, but basically everyone. When something happens, it's not just it's one source. It's not two sources. It's not three sources. It's not four sources. It's an entire barrage of leaks coming out to me, and the Wim Hof Method is a sinking boat. There are so many leaks. I don't know what you're going to do, but if you're going to do a witch hunt, hunt and start going after people, trying to remove certifications like was done to Kotaro Waga, who is one of the most prominent Wim Hof method guys with a huge channel with 80,000 followers, and said nothing but good things about Wim until he said, well, maybe people shouldn't be dying. If you want to start a witch hunt, I just want to remind you that witch hunts are what cults do. And if you want to be the chief inquisitor of the Wim Hof method cult, well, that's on you. And what does that say about the organization that you're in? And to end this video, I want to talk about the stages of cults. So there was this book. Let me see if I can find it. There was this book. It's called The Guru Papers, Masks of Authoritarian Power. It came out in the 80s. It's about how cults work and the stages that they go through from the beginning to the end. Now, when I met Wim Hof, I think I was at the very beginning of everything. I think everyone can agree that I was there in 2013 before this had grown into a national movement, an international movement. And the first stage that they recognize is the proselytizing phase. The first stage they recognize is the proselytizing phase, right? This is where you have an initial stage where the group actively recruits new members. The group's teachings may seem appealing to those who are searching for meaning in a community. However, as members become more deeply involved, they begin to experience feelings of paranoia or isolation from the outside world. That seems to check out. When you're in the Wim Hof method, you're sort of a weirdo. People may not want to be around you because you're an ice bath breathy person. I get that. I've been there. Sorry about the Instagram posts. But you certainly are in a group. The next phase that comes out, and also indicative of the proselytizing phase, at least in the book, is that you have this love bombing. You talk about everything being about love and how you love the people in your audience, and they love you, and it feels very communal. Now, this is like hardcore what Wim is about. Wim is all about the love, baby. Super, super culty. The next phase is the messianic phase. The cult leader is often seen as a messianic figure possessing divine or extraordinary powers. How many videos have talked about Wim Hof's superhuman powers on the internet? Members may be encouraged to believe that the leader can provide salvation or enlightenment. If you've known anyone in the Wim Hof method, perhaps you've seen that sort of discussion out there. I certainly have. Another phase, and some of these phases don't go in chronological order and some overlap, but this is what they describe. Another phase is the apocalyptic stage. This stage characterized by a belief of an impending catastrophe or the end of the world. The cult may prepare for this event by stockpiling supplies or establishing isolated communities. Yeah, I don't think that's happening yet. I don't think we're at the apocalyptic stage. Wim often does talk about, conspiracies by Big Pharma to kill him or undermine him in some way. But I don't think we're quite at apocalypse yet. So this phase is not yet there, but it could be there. The next one is the attractions of cult hierarchy. Cults have rigid hierarchical structure with the leader at the top. Members may be encouraged to give up their individuality and submit to the authority of the leader. This is like dead center. We can see that members like Kotaro Waga and many other instructors who've been kicked out because they didn't submit to the authority, or like me, because I didn't submit to the authority of Wim Hof. You have this rigid structure. Now it's all the lieutenants are the children who have a financial interest in the Wim Hof method. There is a hierarchy here. I think it's probably even documented on their website what their hierarchy is with titles and job descriptions, right? You have levels of instructors, 1, 2, and 3, where the third level instructor you can't get unless you're anointed by, the Wim Hof, probably like Laura, Isabel, or Anam, basically. If you like them, you get to the coveted level 3 spot. But if you don't adhere to all of their brand demands and whatnot, you get knocked off. Dominic Stulins, that his name, he probably is at that level 3 level. Okay, another part is the guru and sexual manipulation. In some cults, the leader may engage in sexual manipulation of members. This can be a powerful tool for controlling or exploiting individuals. I don't have a lot of information on that. I don't think that's characterized of like the main body of Wim Hof. I don't see a lot of that, even in the accusations. So that doesn't fit. That doesn't fit. Betrayal of trust. Okay, now here's another one. As members become more deeply involved in the cult, they may begin to experience a sense of betrayal or disillusionment. The leader may be revealed to be a flawed or even abusive individual. I don't think I even need to tell you why that seems right on the money, right? Abusive individual. I think that's reasonably well documented in the Volkskrant piece. I think it's pretty well documented with all of the instructors who are being kicked out because they don't follow some sort of very rigid set of brand guidelines and rules. I think that betrayal of trust, honestly, this is why I left the Wim Hof method. I felt great betrayal and great disillusionment with the things that I had really felt in my heart that I loved. And I am very active talking about these issues because, well, I loved a lot of the Wim Hof method. I still practice the Wim Hof method, but I am disillusioned with the leader. And in the last phase or part that Diana Alstead and Joel Kramer talk about is spiritual hedonism. In some cases, cults may promote a lifestyle of hedonism, emphasizing pleasure and indulgence. This can lead to harmful behaviors such as drug use or sexual promiscuity. That's not really the Wim Hof thing. I don't think so. I mean, maybe you've seen something different. I don't really see like sort of the sex cult thing going on here. So yeah, now we know all about cults. We know about their phases that they go through. And I would say of these, the ones that fit, we have proselytizing, yes. Messianic phase, yes. Apocalyptic phase, not really. Attractions of the cult hierarchy, yes. Sexual manipulation, no. Betrayal of trust, yes. So we're batting about half. We're batting about 50% here on the definitions of the cult as described by Joel Kramer and Diana Alstead. So that is what I have to say for today. I've moved all of these Wim Hof discussions to my back channel because honestly, you may not want to be watching all of this on my main channel, and we will see. I know that there's a lot more articles coming out. I've been contacted by a bunch of documentary filmmakers and newspapers, and there will be so much more. The last things I want to say is that Wim and Innerfire, if you feel like you're not being correctly represented in the media, I would love to talk to you. I've approached you many, many times. I'd love to just, come out there and start talking, keeping this in the realm of ideas. I think that it would be very, very good if you feel like De Volkskrant did you dirty with their 44 questions that they only gave you a week to respond to. Oh, a week. That's a lot of time. A week to respond to. I feel like my challenge to you is to post your 44 answers to those questions and put them right online and just make it very public what you're responding to and your defenses to it. If you instead of suing De Volkskrant, which I feel like you're gonna lose unless the Dutch laws are incredibly, incredibly different than the American laws, you're gonna lose that because they have the receipts. And just because you feel bad that these stories are coming out is not defamation. It's just not. All right. From Pokey Bear LLC in Denver, Colorado. This was Scott Carney's back channel, and maybe I wanted to do one of these for a little while. I have another video coming out on my main channel on the 14th. I'm going to be doing some travels. I'll be out of the office for like 14 days, and I just have some stuff scheduled. So things may slow down from me. I bet the Wim Hof people are very excited about that. Thanks a lot. Bye.